So far, like we are doing everything in transform message, but today I will tell you about two more component and will tell you which situation you will use which component. And you can treat transform message uh, sorry, in universal cases. Like transform message you can use every places, but to make your flow more generic, okay, so when someone will go through your flow, you want to make things more visible, then we use this set payload and set variable. Okay. Otherwise, transform message has capability of set payload also and set variable also. So let me do one POC project. So I will configure listener. What I will do. So whatever data is coming. So what we can do, sometime we need to store that data inside variable. Sometime we need to store inside payload. Okay. So here to set any variable. Okay. And what is variable here? So let's say you have one data. Okay. And you want to use that same data at multiple places. So what you can do, you can store that particular data inside the variable. And the advantage will be whenever you will make any external call, your all the attributes like query parameter, URI parameter, header, payload, everything will change except variable. So if you have use case, you are getting some request which you want to hold throughout the program and which you want to use at multiple places. Then it's good practice to store that particular data inside the variable. Okay. So if you want to store anything inside the variable, then we use this component set variable. Okay. So how to create this variable? So here you need to give variable name. Okay. So let's say I'm giving request variable. Giving name as a request variable. Okay. And value I'm taking whatever data will come inside payload. I'm taking this entire payload inside this request variable. Once you will click on this fx, then only it will take value from this particular payload. If you will not click this, then this payload will be treated as string. So without clicking this fx, this data will be treated as string data. But if you will click on the fx, then this data is executed based on the data view. Okay. And in data view, payload means what request payload we are getting. So we are storing that payload inside the request variable. Okay. So here what we did, whatever payload we are getting, we are storing inside this request variable. Okay. Now, if you want to access that particular variable, so let's say I want to log that particular variable. Okay, so let me take logger component. To make it faster, to make it this search faster, you can type here also. You will get logger. And another thing you can do right click and you can add in favorite. It's already added in favorite. Here I'm getting option to remove. So if I go to favorite, you can see few components are there, which we use very frequently. Okay, so here you can add few favorite component to make your development faster. Okay, or you can search here. Everything is fine. So here what I want to do, I want to get the value of this variable. Okay, so again click on fx, then type here vars dot variable name. So we have only one variable, so this variable is coming here. Set variable, you need to use set variable component, and there you need to define variable name and data with expression from where you are getting the value. Fetch the value of that variable, you need to write syntax vars dot variable name. Okay, so let's see one working demo for this. So I'm passing this first name and last name in this payload. Okay, and we will call that particular API. So once request will come in this API, so what we are doing, we are storing that payload inside this variable. Storing that particular payload inside this request variable. Okay, and then in this logger, what we are doing, we are retrieving that variable value and we are logging this. Okay, so let me call this API. So request came here. Once I will click on next, once this variable will execute, then you will able to see that variable inside this. Okay, so you can see here we have one variable name is request variable, and the value of this variable is JSON payload. So once we will execute this logger, so what this logger will do, whatever value we have inside this variable, it will log that value. So you can see here in console, it logged the value of variable. So set variable component we use to create any variable, and then value you need to write syntax vars dot variable name. As I mentioned, why we need this kind of variable. So whenever you are using some some kind of data in multiple places, so either you can retrieve that data on multiple places, or you can retrieve data and store inside one variable, and wherever you need that value, then get that value from variable. Okay, so it will help you this kind of practice will help you to make consistency in your application, and like later on you will come to know. So whenever we are calling any external system, your entire data will be overwritten, like your payload, query parameter, URI parameter, everything will be overwritten. So if you have requirement after calling external system also, you need your request data, what you are getting at the very initial stage. So what we can do, we can store those kind of data inside variable, and variable will persist throughout your application. Until unless you are not changing that variable data will be there throughout the execution. So what we can do, we can store those kind of data in variable and we can use wherever we require. So even if there will be any external call in between, there will be 2-3 external call, still the value we are looking like initial set of data that will be stored inside the variable. Okay, so hope everyone got this concept. What is the use of set variable component?
Sorry, I hear me.
Anyone saying anything? I can. Your
Okay,
voice is very low.
1 second. Okay. I, now, are you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Uh, my question was, what is different between React and payload?
Your voice is still not
Answer,
clear.
yeah,
It's
from
it's breaking.
no,
Voice is still breaking.
okay, okay, okay.
Same
Very
for
much.
everyone, or it's only for me?
For me also.
Okay. I'm trying to change speaker sound. Sorry, it was a headphone. Are you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Okay. My question was, uh, what is the difference between the payload and the area when we transfer from customer to anyone use?
Your voice is very fluctuating, so I'm unable to understand. You can type your message in chat.
Okay,
Okay, your
okay,
voice is
okay,
very fluctuating. Yeah, it's very up and down, so it's like
okay,
I'm unable to understand.
okay,
You can ask in chat. Okay.
okay. Sure.
Yeah. So in this way, we can set variable, we can retrieve variable, and we have two use case where we need variable. One use case, if you want to use same data in multiple places, so better to store in variable and use wherever you need. Second use case, if you want to hold some data for further usage, for future usage throughout the execution, then we used to store inside variable, since other data may or may not change. Okay, may change in case of any external system call. Your payload, query parameter, everything might change. So what we can do, if you need those data in future usage during the execution, you can store inside variable. Two use cases we have for set variable. Now coming to set payload. So whatever we are like doing till this point in transform message, we are setting payload. Okay, if you open any transform message, what we have covered so far, we used to set payload. Here you can see we are storing inside payload. Here also we are storing the payload, and whatever data you will store inside payload, your last payload will be response of your API. Okay, this is the last payload of this execution. This is the last payload of this execution. So whatever last payload will be there in your execution, that will be response of your API. And why I'm saying your last payload will be response of your API, if you go to listener, if you will go to responses, so you can see here response body will be your payload. If you want to have something else in your response, then you can change here. But by default, your last payload, whatever data you will have in your last payload. Okay, in between you can use multiple payload. Okay, let's say before this also I am having one payload, and after this also I am having one payload and the variant. Okay, so whatever data you will have at this place at the last step of like last processing of this execution, whatever payload value will be there, that will be response of your API. Since our listener, we have this default configuration. In case of success, your payload will be response of your API. If you want, you can change it. You can make it some variable. You can make it some other data. But by default, it's payload. And so far, I have seen none of the project we are changing this default value. Okay. So it's a common understanding for everyone. Whatever last payload will be there, that will be our response. And no one used to like do some other definition for this. So it's you can say universal only in all the API. Whatever your last payload data will be there, that will be response of your API. Okay. So here, what I am doing in set payload, I will put result load one. Payload two. So can anyone tell me what will be response of this API? If I will execute this API, what will be response of this API?
Payload 3.
Yes.
Yes.
So as I mentioned, whatever last payload mapping we will do, we will store the data inside the last execution of our components in our API. Okay. So that will be response of this API. So here in this execution, at the end, we are setting this. Even if we will set this payload before this logger also, still response of this API will be this only, the payload 3 only. Okay. No matter we have more components here, but if we have payload this, then that will be our response of our API. Yes, so let me save this and let me run this. So at this moment we are here. So at this moment, payload is same payload what we are passing from request. Okay. And then once we will execute next, then you can see this payload will change. Okay. And what is the value of payload? Payload 1, result equals to payload 1. This is the value. Since we are like not changing the format, that's why it's taking as a Java. What is the media type? Java. Okay, so here we are not writing any data type. So or by default, it will take as a Java. Then after execution of this variable, one variable will be created. So one variable got created here. And this time inside this variable, since we are passing the payload inside this variable, so what was the value of payload? Payload 1. So in this variable also we will have payload 1. After set payload, after this set payload, like this payload value will change. Okay. So this payload value will change, and now our data will be payload 2. Once we will execute this payload, then you can see this payload value will change from payload 2 to payload 3. Okay. And now during this entire execution, this is our last set payload. Okay. So whatever last payload will be there, that will be response of your API. So once we will execute this, we will have response payload 3, but it's in Java format. So it's look like this. Okay. So if you want to make it JSON, so let me do a small change. We need to add output. So here we need to add output. If you want to see in the same format, you need to click on this. Click on this. And you will be able to write same way how we are writing data view. And from tomorrow, we will start data view. So we'll do some detailed learning in data view. So you will get more clear picture. So this time you can see payload is coming in Java format. Sorry, JSON format. And then you will be able to see. Let's Java only. Let me see. Part haven't saved. So एक एक मिनट रुको। Rohit, I think you have the question. Yeah, you can ask. Do you have any question?
Yes, sir. I have not understood that set payload part completely, sir. But yes, I will watch it again. So
The
maybe I'll
set
get
payload
it.
is
But
nothing but we are creating payload. Okay. And as per our listener definition, okay, in listener, what we did, we have defined whatever our payload will be there. Okay. If you check any listener, if you go in response property, so you can see in response, a response body will be always payload. Okay. So as per this configuration, whatever your last payload, okay, here we are setting multiple payload, but what payload will be last of your execution? Here we have one payload, but this payload value is getting changed here. This payload value getting changed here. And this payload value is not getting changed anywhere else. And this is the last execution where we are setting the payload. Okay, so whatever payload we will have at this place, that will be response of our API. Okay, so using set payload component, you can create any payload, and whatever last payload will be there in your execution, that will be response of your API. Is it clear?
okay. Yes, sir.
So let me call this API. So you can see our last payload was payload 3. So we are getting this payload 3 as a response of this API. Okay. So hope everyone clear on this set payload and set variable part. Now you will say,
I have a question in set variable.
yes, go ahead.
Suppose we stored two values from payloads in set variable, right? Uh,
Yes,
if we required, suppose more than after that, suppose we need to store again five variable,
yes.
then it will overwrite the previous variable, or it is stored along with the previous variable.
Yeah. So you mean to say here we did set variable, and after this you are doing set variable.
No, no,
And
actually
then
in set, the use of set variable is storing the data, right? For
yes,
further process. So
yes,
through postman, through body part, we just suppose we stored two values, like developer guide. Suppose
yes,
two value developer guide, and
yes.
after one day, suppose after one day, I need to store five another values. Then in that case, how we can do?
So you need to create new variable. You
Okay,
can create n number of variable.
okay, okay,
So here you are storing in this set variable, you are storing whatever payload you are getting. And in this payload, we are getting first name and last name, developer and guide. Okay.
okay,
Then after some time, you want to create some other variable. If you will create variable with same name, then this value will be override. But if you want to store some different set of data, you can create another. So this one is request one variable. You can create request two variable. So you can create n number of variable.
okay, okay,
So here I will create request to variable, and inside this I will store help. Okay. Then you will create another variable, something like test data. You can give any name also. And here I am storing something. So you can create n number of variable. But if you will create any variable with same name, then this data will be overwrite. Is it clear?
The new data will upload and the existing data had gone, right?
Yes, yes. So new data will replace the existing data.
Okay, okay.
Okay, so if you want to persist that existing data, then you need to create new variable. That variable name should be different.
Okay, okay.
Okay. Now here only we have one thing. Here you are doing set
Sir,
variable, let's say.
for every variable we have to set a payload. It is compulsory. We have to set the payload again and again for every new variable.
For every variable, this value, which payload you are saying? This
Suppose,
payload?
sir, yes, sir,
Okay.
the mid
First
one,
of
sir,
all,
the mid one.
variable and payload, whenever you need, then only you will set. It's not like you must need to set. If you need, then only you will set. Now, how many variable, how many payload you need, it's based on your requirement. Okay.
Okay,
Let's
sir.
say
Okay, sir.
we have requirement of 3 variable. I want to create 3 variable, which I will use multiple places. So I will create 3 variable. If I need only one, I will create only one. Say here, it might be possible we have 3 set variable and only one set payload. We have one set variable, we have 3 set payload. Is it clear?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, so here you can see we have conjugative 3 set variable and one set payload. Okay. Instead of writing this 4 component, we can write only one transform message. So whatever task you are doing in this 4 component, you can do in one transform message. So that is the beauty of this transform message and the main purpose of creating this transform message. So transform message itself is capable to create n number of variable and one payload. Okay. So inside one transform message, you can create n number of variable, n number of attribute, and one payload. So how we can create n number of variable? So here you can see plus symbol, click on this. Here you can see we have drop down attribute and variable. Let's select variable and give variable name. Let's say I'm giving variable name request one variable. Click OK and set the value. So what was the value of this? Let's say result variable one. So the purpose of this variable is done. Okay, data and just change this data so you can store anything. This variable part is done here. Now second variable. Okay, I will go here, click on plus, go to set variable. I want to create this variable. And what is the value of this variable? Hello. This is also done. Then we have third variable test data. So here, test data. So this is also done. This set payload, we want to set this as a payload. So this also will delete. Go here. Inside this payload, payload will be by default. Whenever you will create one transform message, by default one payload will be created. So we'll set this payload. So you can see here, previously we had 3 set variable and 1 set payload. Now this transform message itself is capable to do all those things. So one transform message, inside one transform message, you can create n number of variable, n number of attribute, and one payload. Okay. So that is the main purpose of this transform message. If in your API, you need to create multiple variable and set payload and multiple set attribute in one place, instead of dragging and dropping those components one by one, you can use one transform message. So what it will do, it will remove the complexity of your API. Let's say you have to set 10 variable and one payload. So you need to drag and drop 11 component. Your flow size will be too much. Okay, your flow design size will increase to with like it will be very lengthy. So to remove that kind of complexity, what we can do, we can configure one transform message and we can set here one payload and n number of variable. Okay, in this drop down, you will able to see all those variable and payload. So if you want to see this variable, you click on this. If you want to see another variable, click on this. And if you want to add new attribute or variable, you can add here. So if you want to add payload, payload will also be visible here, since one transform message can create one maximum one payload, and that is already created. Okay, this payload is already created. So you are not getting, after clicking on plus, you are not getting that payload option. But if I will delete this payload, okay, let me delete this payload. If I will delete this payload, then you will able to see that payload option also here. You can see. Since payload you can create only one time. So once you will create, that option will be disabled. So once you will create, option will be disabled.
Can we hold multiple values in variable?
Multiple value in variable means okay. So let's say here we have one variable. Okay, we have one value as a one key value pair result. So you can hold another also.
If we hold multiple key values, can we call individually? Like I want to call only result.
Yes, you can. Okay. Let's say now you have two data. So inside this variable, I want to fetch only this data value. Okay. So syntax will be where's dot request one variable dot data. If you want to fetch all this result, then where's dot variable name request one variable. Then it will give you entire JSON payload. But if you want to fetch only this or only this, syntax will be where's dot this variable name dot result. Is it clear?
Is it a best practice to, in the first example, you have set an variable, in the set variable you have called payload, right? Whatever the data we are passing for postman, you have used in the payload. But after that, you are again calling one other payload, which is replaced by the existing payload. So in the such cases, our set variable, whatever the use case is gone, right? Like because it is being replaced with the other payload.
Don't take it practically. This will not work in real use case. Just give me 1 minute. So this is not real example. Okay, in real use case, we will
No,
see
no.
those things.
Just an example I'm asking, like, in the real cases, can we, is it a best practice to hold payload in the set variable?
Payload in set variable. Yeah. Ideally, what we used to do in your real use case, what will happen? You will do some external system call. Okay. So whenever we are developing any API, it's good practice to hold all the request data, all the request attribute inside one variable. Since you might need to do many external call, and those request data you will lose there. once you will do any external call. In future, you might need that set of data what you are getting in actual call. So it's good practice whenever you are starting the process, hold the entire request payload inside one variable. Once we will start real-time project, I will tell you how we will do that. So when you are like in my project also, whenever we are developing any API, we are storing that entire request, either attribute or payload, everything inside one variable. So that in future, if we need those data, we can use.
You mean after listener only we are going to set the
Yes, yeah,
variable so that we can
yes,
use
correct.
that. Okay.
Yes, just
So
after
even
the
though
visit.
in the next process it is override, still we can call the first one, right?
Yes, correct.
Got it.
Sir, one small doubt. Can't we use a different set of payload in one transform message?
Set of payload in one term, no. Payload only one, but variable and attribute you can set multiple.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, Ravi, like you said, whatever data inside the transform message cannot be changed like a set variable or payload.
Whatever data we have in transform message, after this
Cannot be
transform
changed.
message,
Yeah.
sorry.
Whatever data inside the transform message cannot be changed
Yes.
like set variable and set payload.
Yes, you can change. Transform message, you can set multiple variable, payload, one payload and multiple attributes together in one place. Okay, only that is the advantage. Part of that, whatever you are setting here, you can replace those values. Let's say here what we did, we have created one payload and value is this. But later on in this set payload, we are overwriting the payload value with payload 2. So this payload, whatever we created here, that will be overwrite by this.
Yeah, okay, Ravi.
Okay.
Ravi, in transform message, what kind of attributes we will set? We can set in attributes also.
So here you can see, let's say we have one attribute. And that attribute is header. Okay. So inside header, we have two header. One header is, or let's say query params. Okay. Inside query parameter, we have like anything number. Value of number, we are taking anything. Say 10. So what it will do, it will update inside attribute. Inside attribute, let's say we have query parameter and query parameter name is, it will update the value of number by 10. So we can update value of attribute in transform message. Is it clear?
P should be caps, right? P should be caps.
Query params, yeah.
Okay, fine.
Everyone clear on this part? Okay, so now
Sir, could you
we will,
please transform message to see how it will come in the Postman?
you want entire
Yeah,
application?
since you have used multiple variables, can we see how
Yeah,
it will?
yeah, sure. Okay, one more thing. After this, we will take a 20-minute break and then we will take class again. Okay, so if anyone want to do dinner and all or breakfast, few people are from US also. So you can do that and we'll take more class today. Okay, since soon we are going to start real-time project. So we will reach till that extent so we can understand the real-time project. Parallelly, we will have this training session also. But yeah, we need to speed up a bit. So we will cover more topic today. So after 30 minutes, we will have one hour session again. So like after 8:30, we'll start again on 9 to 10. Again, we will have 1 hour. Okay, so everyone be prepared for that. Okay, fine. So let me call this API. Here you can see variable size is 0, payload. We have that payload what we are getting as a request. Okay, and variable is 0. Now, once I will execute this transform message, you can see variable size is 3. Now we have 3 variable: request variable, request to variable, test data. Okay, payload, we have updated payload. Is it clear now? So once you will execute this transform message, what it did? Okay, one query parameter also. Oh, sorry, one attribute also. That which query parameter? You can see one query params number also created. Okay. So once this transform message will execute, it will create 3 variable, 1 attribute, and 1 payload. Okay, and after this execution, this payload will be override. Since we are setting this payload, so that payload will be override. Set this payload. This payload is now payload 1, but after this will change payload 2. This will change payload 3. Okay, our result. Okay, fine. So let's take what is time? 8:30 now. Let's connect at 9. We'll have 1 hour
Ravi, what
session
is in
again.
logger, Ravi? What message we are printing in the logger?
I think, last payload we are printing, I think. Okay, where's dot request variable. I'm not sure we have any variable with this name or not. Request variable. We don't have any variable with this name, so it will print null. Okay, if you see logger, then it will print null. Since there is no such variable. Let's connect in 30 minutes.